I hope everyone's been staying safe this summer, especially with this week's recent tropical storm. And I'd like to say that our thoughts and prayers tonight are with the people of Lebanon and all those affected by the explosion in Beirut. I'm Vincent Gadioma, this year's FUSA student president. I'm calling in from Nyack, New York, and I'm joined by my vice president, Tobenna Ugwu from Ohio. At tonight's event, we will be answering questions regarding student well-being outside of the classroom and safety guidelines on campus this fall. If you have a question related to classroom and instruction, please hold it and attend our webinar on academic and career readiness next Tuesday, August 11th at 6 p.m. If you have a question related to move-in, the class of 2024 can attend a webinar next Tuesday, the 11th at noon. And for the class of 2023, 2022, and 2021, next Thursday, the 13th at 6 p.m. Tonight's webinar and all the webinars will be recorded for future reference. With that said, we're joined by our lovely panelists tonight from areas across campus. I'd like to let them introduce themselves now. Karen?
Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Karen Donoghue and I serve in the role as Vice President for Student Life.
Vice President Frassinelli couldn't make it tonight. He is unfortunately affected due to the storm. So I'd like to pass it off to Associate Vice President Susan Birge.
Yes, hi, thank you, Vinny, and hi, everyone. I'm Susan Birge. I'm the Associate Vice President for Health and Wellness. The areas on campus which I oversee are the RecPlex, Counseling and Psychological Student Services, and the Student Health Center.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Good evening, everyone, from 30 miles out in the Atlantic. I'm on Nantucket Island and willing to answer any questions you have concerning food service, the bookstore, the bus, or anything else that you might have. And it's great to be dealing with students again.
Thank you, Dean Johnson.
Great, good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, everyone, I should say, or maybe good afternoon, good evening, depending on what part of the country you're in right now, or what part of the world. I'm Will Johnson. I serve as Dean of Students at Fairfield University. Great to be with you all.
Thank you. And finally, the lovely Todd Pelazza.
Well, thank you, Vinny. I've been called a lot of things. I think it's the first time lovely.
Hello, he got lovely.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for joining us this evening, and we look forward to giving you some useful information.
So before we begin, if you have any questions at any point during this webinar, feel free to utilize the Q&A function located at the bottom of your screen. We will endeavor to answer as many questions as we can, but also feel free to leave your email address and a FUSA representative will follow up with an answer if your question wasn't answered live. With that being said, Vice President Donoghue, could you please speak to the preparation the university has made over the summer for the reopening in the fall?
Great. Thank you so much, Toby, and thank you very much, Vinny. And it's wonderful to speak with all of you this evening. You know, actually, ever since we kind of pivoted to remote learning, we have been engaging in a regular dialogue about 3 times a week as a university community to prepare for the next, 3 weeks, right, before you all come back to our campus. And part of these dialogues have been in consultation with the state of Connecticut, their formation of a higher education committee, as well as our local health department. So every decision that we have been making has been unfortunately kind of timely, depending on when we are able to release the information. But we're now in a really good place as we prepare to welcome all of you back to our community. And several communications have already gone out, whether it's from myself or other parts of the community, and you can still anticipate more communications going out to help you prepare for your arrival this fall, whether you're coming from a hotspot state, because that information is most recently shared, and I'll touch upon that a little bit later, or if you're coming from another state, to ensure that your transition back to our community are really safe. If we want to go ahead to that first question, Toby, I think it's important for us as a community to really prepare for what it's going to be like this fall. The heart of Fairfield University will remain the same. We are still a Jesuit Catholic institution committed to ensuring that all of us will have a top-notch education. Whether you will be joining us fully this fall or taking your classes virtually, I assure you our faculty are prepared to ensure that that class content is exactly how it would have been if we were not in the middle of a global pandemic. The campus life experience, though, probably will be a little different. You know, for our first year students, it's going to become your new normal. You might not necessarily know what a non-pandemic Fairfield University experience will be, but for our sophomores, juniors, and seniors, it will look and feel a little bit different. You'll still be surrounded by all of your friends. You'll still be having those interactions, whether it's with your administrative mentors or your faculty, but the interaction itself will look different. First of all, like you've been doing at home, we will all be wearing masks. It is a requirement unless you are in your residence hall room or if you are eating that you will be wearing a mask. In addition to that, the social gatherings that you have witnessed in the past will not be able to occur because of the safety of the community. So events that used to occur, I can honestly say Presidential Ball being one of the main ones that FUSA hosts every single year. Unfortunately, in this time, we cannot hold an event that would have that many people. So there will be restrictions placed on how many people can gather at the same time, as well as what kind of events that we can run as we move forward as an institution. With that said, we will still be hosting events. We will still be hosting events both in person as well as virtually, but the look and feel of them will be different. Anticipate, as long as the weather holds out, the majority of our gatherings will be outside. We'll be utilizing both new spaces where we're bringing tents onto campus, as well as just being out in the air like we would do on a regular basis to really deliver a lot of our engagement opportunities for our students moving forward. Within the residence halls, you can still anticipate that your RAs and your new student leaders will be engaging in a lot of co-curricular activities with all of you. But again, the look and the feel will be different as we move into this fall. So I think you need to just anticipate that Fairfield University during a pandemic, like any other institution across the United States, will feel a little differently, but the heart of it, the foundation, will continue to be the same.
Thank you, Vice President Donoghue. The next question we have is actually for Vice President Frassinelli, who unfortunately cannot be here, so I'll open up to the floor. COVID-19 can be spread by respiratory droplets passed between people. What are some safety precautions being implemented into campus buildings to help stop the spread of COVID-19?
Great, Vinny, I'm happy to start, and then Sue, if you want to join in, that would be great. So a couple of things for us to prepare for. Fairfield University has been doing thorough cleaning all summer to ensure that the campus is looking beautiful, and I must say it is looking beautiful right now. But when you come onto campus, there'll be some visible things that you will see right away. In all public areas, in all doorways, you will now see hand sanitizers. Again, we are encouraging all students to wash their hands, as well as community members, as much as they can. But if washing your hands is not available, the second best thing is to make sure that you're using hand sanitizer. In all public restrooms, as well as restrooms within the residence halls, there will be sanitary wipes. It will be an expectation that students wipe down things that they're using, such as in the classroom. It'll be an expectation that you wipe down your desk before and after using it within the classroom, as well as in the bathroom. It is an expectation and a guideline that students, after they use a sink, would actually wipe down the sink after they use it, as well as beforehand using a wipe sanitizing product. These are the things that we are ensuring to keep our campus community clean, and using ourselves as active citizens to do that. In addition to that, we have a contracted service that we will use on a regular basis. We call them ABM. They are doing increased cleaning in all of our areas on campus, especially those that have high traffic. For example, all residence halls will be assigned an ABM worker so we can have constant cleaning within the community, as well as all of our academic buildings and our public high visible areas, such as our recreational complex and our Barone campus center. All of these areas will have thorough increased cleaning on a regular basis. Lastly, if you are a student that is in an independent residence hall, in sense that you will have your own apartment or townhouse and your own bathrooms to clean, so whether it's the suites or a townhouse or apartment, we'll be providing cleaning products to assist with yourself cleaning those facilities, and then we as an institution will also go in on a regular basis to continue to clean your bathrooms and your kitchen areas.
In addition to some of the many efforts that Karen has discussed in terms of reducing the probability of transmitting this virus. What our facilities folks did is they got blueprints of every area on campus, and they mapped out how we can social distance, how every student, staff, faculty can keep 6 feet from one another. And so the way that played out is that a number of desks, chairs, tables have been removed from classrooms, the library, labs, lounges. In other words, we had to take out equipment and we had to take out chairs and tables in order to facilitate the 6 feet distance, which is required in a public health crisis. So it will look different because in addition to having less equipment and less chairs and tables, you're also going to see signs. So let's say, for instance, it's Canisius. One door is going to be the entrance, the other door is the exit. There's going to be directional signs, and additionally, on floors throughout campus, you're going to see like labels and markers indicating 6 feet distancing. So we're going to do everything we can to help the members of our community adhere to not having close contact, because that's how this virus is transmitted. So that's what we have to be so careful to avoid. So they've done a wonderful job with that, but it will look different.
Thank you, Karen and Sue. For the next question, Sue, how can students maintain their physical and mental health throughout the year? And what resources do the University Health Center and Counseling and Psychological Services plan to offer in the fall?
Yeah, thanks, Toby. I want to just continue on a little bit about coming to Fairfield University in a pandemic. We take it very seriously. We're confident that we're going to create the safest environment humanly possible for our community to return to. So one of the things that I'm sure you've heard is that an important component of managing a virus is testing. At Fairfield University, we have 3 types of tests. By now, you've received an email from the university to go on and register so that you will have an at-home test. Arrive at your house, arrive at your location where you are now. It's a saliva test. You're just going to spit some saliva into a tube and you're going to pop it right back in the mail. That's going to make certain that when you come onto campus, you're not bringing the virus because you'll be testing negative. If you test positive, then you need to get isolation, you need to talk to your doctor, and we need to postpone your return to campus. The next kind of testing we're going to do is that every Tuesday at Fairfield U, we're going to have Testing Tuesday. Per the state of Connecticut regulations, we have to test between 5 and 10% of our campus community. So students will receive on a Thursday an email saying you have been selected, and this is a randomized selection, to have this test, which you will go register online for a time, and then you will go to the Quick Center. This test is a nasal swab. You take like a Q-tip, you put it in the front of your nose, you wipe it around, and then we collect it, we send it back to the lab. Why are we doing that? Because we want to monitor, we want to survey. This is surveillance testing for our community. There's a third kind of a test. What if somebody doesn't feel good on campus? What if a student starts to have body aches or a temperature or a cough, difficulty breathing? You're going to go into the student health center and
you're cooking.
And they're going to have a point of care test. This is one of those rapid tests. And so then you're going to be able to know within 35 minutes or so whether or not you're positive or negative. Let's talk about the next phase after the testing. Anybody who tests positive, we've identified about 60 rooms on campus. They're down in the old Dolan School of Business. And those are our isolation and they're our quarantine rooms. They're really nice. They have a private bathroom. They have sheets, bedding, Wi-Fi. They're like being in a hotel room. If somebody is ill, positive with the virus, we're going to have you go in there until you meet criteria for coming out of isolation. We're also going to be doing contact tracing. Contact tracing is that when Fairfield University Student Health Center learns that somebody has tested positive, we've got to figure out who might have been exposed. And we're going to contact that individual and we're going to say, we have information. We're not going to tell you who the student was or the faculty member, the staff member was. We have information that you might have been exposed to the virus. If it's a credible exposure, that means they were within 6 feet of you for more than 15 minutes, you're going to go into a quarantine room. Of course, these are nice rooms, again, down in the old Dolan School of Business, and you'll have to remain there for 14 days. Why are we doing this? This is public health efforts, best practices, so that we don't spread the virus. The last thing we want is our students, our community members to become ill, and we certainly don't want to have to close down the university. So we're going to do everything on our end to protect everybody and to contain this virus. We need your help. It's very much continued on the behavior of individuals in terms of social distancing, wearing a mask, and not gathering in large groups. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about the resources. The Student Health Center, they're moved. They're in a brand new wellness center. It's off the back of Joe's, and it's just state of the art. They're open 7 days a week. They have a medical doctor, nurse practitioners, RNs. They're going to be able to do the testing. They're going to be able to test for flu. They're a terrific team of seasoned professionals, and that's going to be your go-to if you don't feel well or you have any questions. Now, even though a virus, even though a pandemic is a physical manifestation, really it can impact individuals' mental health and well-being. It can cause a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of uncertainty. You can kind of get in a funk. You can feel like not very motivated. You can feel kind of depressed. And maybe you're worried about you, maybe you're worried about family members. And you know what? Maybe you know somebody who's sick or has lost their lives. So counseling and psychological services will be doing a combination of in-person psychotherapy as well as remote, as well as using a telehealth model. We're going to be running our groups. We're going to be doing a lot of workshops. We're going to try to have a high presence in FYE, residence life, and work closely with FUSA this year in terms of meeting student health needs at Fairfield University. So you've got wonderful resources in terms of your health and well-being, and I encourage you to use them.
Perfect. Thank you, Vice President Birge, so much for that lovely answers.
Lovely.
I'm using the word lovely a lot, yes.
I love it.
Now, Mr. Fitzpatrick, are you able to answer a few questions on dining, specifically on how on-campus food service and dining halls have been altered to reflect a safe and enjoyable dining experience?
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everyone. We've been working probably since sometime in April to try to figure out how in God's name we were going to be able to provide food to our students returning in September. And the first priority has been the health and safety. I didn't think there was going to be any way that we were going to be able to offer dining, but once we started to work with our food service partners at EXO, it became apparent that there were going to be some options. So what we've done is we've created 4 dining halls on campus. Freshmen will eat in the Barone Campus Center. Some freshmen will eat in the Tully Dining Commons, and some freshmen will eat in the Oak Room. And the
Apologies for the technical problem. Mr. Fitzpatrick? Well, on that note, I'd like to pass it off to any of our attendees who are going to talk about the on-campus food service. If Mr. Fitzpatrick joins in, we'll chime him in.
Will, do you want to jump in?
Well, I think if most people got the sense of what Mr. Fitzpatrick was sharing with folks. So, essentially we've set up several dining areas on campus, which certain demographics within our university community will be assigned to Eden. So again, as we talk about some of the many changes, you know, I know for our returning students, you know, you're used to just eating in the Tully. For our new students, I'm sure many of you are aware of the Tully. But for this upcoming year, we're going to have multiple locations where students can eat, and they will be assigned to eat in these various locations. So as he mentioned, you know, first-year students will be eating in the Barone Campus Center. We're going to also be making use of space in, I believe, in the School of Business as well. It may or may not be on the list, I think. And as well as perhaps down at the Old Dolan School of Business as well, too. So if you think of any of the larger function spaces on our campus, those are going to be the various dining areas that we'll have available for our students to eat in. The Stag is going to be open as well, too. So students will be able to eat there. I think the biggest change in all of this is this concept of grab and go. Right, so there will be some spaces for students to sit down and eat in these various dining areas, but perhaps the largest option that we think many students are going to take advantage of is this idea of grab and go, where you can go into one of these dining facilities and basically pick up your meals. And certainly at the beginning of the year when it's very nice outside, you can take your food outside, eat on a picnic table, eat on the grass, eat amongst friends. But certainly as the year goes on, you can bring it back to your residence hall room or your apartment or townhouse and consume your meals there as well too. Essentially, all of the buffet options that our returning students may be used to, all of those will be gone. Those have certainly been marked as hot spots, just to use that term, for the transmission of COVID-19. So many of those self-service buffet type options that have traditionally been within our dining facilities will no longer be an option. But believe me, just from what I've heard from Mr. Fitzpatrick, we're still gonna be offering the students a pretty robust dining option, meal plan option, nutritious meal plan option as well too, not just burgers and fries and chicken fingers every single night, but certainly meal options that will allow students to maintain their health and wellness as well too.
Dr. Johnson, I think you should work for the food service.
Well, I'm lucky to share an office that's right next to Mr. Fitzpatrick. So in the past 7 years, I've learned a lot about food service, maybe more than I even wanted.
The barometric pressure here on Nantucket hasn't been too well. So I was listening to Dr. Johnson. I think he covered all the hot spots. One other thing that everyone should know is we're going to have 4 voluntary plans for students living in the campus residence halls that have kitchens. There'll be plans in the levee, and there'll be plans in the conference center dining room that students will be able to go online to. I put that on the chat room. It's https://foodplans.fairfield.edu. If not, then just give me an email, jfitzpatrick@fairfield.edu, and I will try to answer all your questions without being lost in this webinar. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mr. Fitz. The next question is for you, Dean Johnson. All community members have the responsibility to help stop the spread of COVID-19. What can students do to keep themselves safe and others safe?
So I want to see if Mr. Fitzpatrick is prepared to answer my question. Can you do this one, Fitz? Oh, okay. So
no, it's all yours.
It's all mine. I've got it. I've been practicing this for a while. So as you heard, I think from Vinny's comments, from Vice President Donoghue's comments, our campus community, our environment is going to be very different come September. It's not going to be what first-year students were probably expecting when they decided that they were going to come to Fairfield, and certainly is not going to be the same environment that our returning students are used to from their previous years at the university. We need to do everything, as Dr. Birge says, in our powers collectively. That means the faculty, the students, and the staff to keep our campus community safe. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. You know, we're pretty confident that we are going to be able to start up this academic year We've done everything we need to do to make sure the residence halls are open, the dining facilities are ready to go, the classrooms are set up. The larger question is, how long can we last? How long can we get through this? And really, that's going to depend a lot on all of us taking the appropriate steps that we need to minimize the transmission of COVID-19. So most of you, hopefully all of you, have checked your Stags Come Home checklist. In the Stags Come Home checklist, we've outlined a lot of things in there. And I want to pay particular attention to the social pledge, number one. Social pledge was a concept that we developed at the university with input from FUSA, input from IRHA, input from the Office of Residence Life, Student Engagement, and the Office of the Dean of Students, as well as our off-campus student organization, BRAG. And what our social pledge really outlines are what are those particular steps that we want and need every single student to take in order to keep our campus community safe. We want everyone to come on campus saying, this is what I'm going to do. I want to be at Fairfield. I want to have a great experience at Fairfield on campus this year, and I'm going to do everything within my power, which you all have the power to do. You all read my letter, hopefully, from about a week or so ago. You have the ability to make campus a very, very safe place for one another. The second piece I want to point out is are the student directives. And the student directives really get into more of some of the social elements about the university. So Dean Donoghue talked, Vice President Donoghue. Dean Donoghue just sounds so good before, but she's a VP now. Vice President Donoghue laid out the fact that we're going to need to wear masks all of the time. Essentially, any time that you're not in your assigned residence hall room or you're not in one of our dining facilities, there's going to be an expectation that you're wearing a mask. The student directives also go on to talk about gatherings and how large those gatherings can be and who you can have as guests within our university community. I think most folks have come to the understanding already that there will essentially be no outside guests or visitors on campus. So that means no siblings, no significant others or intimate partners, no best friends from home coming to campus and visiting this year. That's an absolute no. In terms of other students who don't live on campus, such as our off-campus beach students or our students who are commuters, those students are not permitted to enter the residence halls this year. You know, some students might say, well, how can I get to see some of my friends who may be commuters or who live off campus? Well, certainly during these early part of the year, take advantage of the outdoor environments that we have on campus. Meet outside, sit on a seat wall, sit on the BCC lawn or out in the quad area. That's where you can connect with some of your peers. Certainly the BCC is an area where people can come and sit down and connect with one another in those environments. But the residence halls will not be a place where those types of activities take place. Additionally, we are going to allow students on campus to have what I call inter-residence halls guests or inter-university housing guests, which means you can have a friend or peers who also live on campus come into your assigned residence facility to visit you. Each residence facility is, or residence hall room, apartment, townhouse is limited to just 2 guests. So for traditional residence halls, that means you can't have more than 4 people in your for many of our townhouses, where there's anywhere between 4, 5, 6, or 8 people there, the max you're going to get is 10 in any of those environments. But again, pointing out no more than 2 guests in any of those environments. So the idea of parties, large social gatherings, everyone in your friend group coming together to your townhouse. I know for our juniors and seniors, you've been looking forward to these moments for a very long time now. You've sort of suffered through your first 2 years of living in some of our traditional residence halls, and we're really looking to take advantage of some of the entertainment space you have in your townhouses and apartments, but this is not going to be the year to do that. And certainly the Office of the Dean of Students, along with Public Safety, along with the Department of Office of Residence Life, are ready to take swift action against those students, those individuals who do not want to act in line with these directives that we put out. We are taking this very seriously. You know, we all have each other's health and well-being in our hands, and really want students to make sure that they're doing their part to make sure that the Fairfield University community remains safe. And I'll sort of end my diatribe there, but certainly will answer any specific questions that we have time for those afterwards. Turn it back over to you, Toby.
Thank you, Dean Johnson. The next question is for Director Pelazza. How is public safety committing to keeping students and other community members safe during the pandemic?
Thank you, Toby, and I want to apologize to everybody. I'm having connectivity issues. I hope you're able to hear me. Are you, Toby?
Yes.
Okay, hopefully my video will come up soon. But thank you for the question. And I just want to build on some of the points that Dr. Johnson was talking to us about. You know, really, we have been planning for your return since the end of March. And we can't wait to have everyone back. Our community is not a university without you here. But again, the success of our semester really hinges on a combined group and community effort. And that's everybody. That's you, that's me, that's our friends, that's everyone at the university. We have to change our approach in the way we've been doing things or acting, and we have to really think about how are my actions going to affect the good of my community. Okay, and back. One of the things that we've gone beyond the state norms have suggested or mandated that we do. For example, you know, everyone at the university is being tested. The state requirement is not that employees be tested, and yet we're doing that. All of our officers, you may know, are EMTs. We've provided a lot of additional training, a lot of additional equipment to address any type of medicals that we'll be doing when you return. And we talked about a new health center. We have a beautiful new facility, and we've been waiting for this for many, many years. It's in the center of campus again. It's going to be phenomenal. But we're asking people again to do that social distancing. What we're trying to do is limit exposure while balancing a positive student experience. So if you can get to the health center on your own, we're encouraging you to do so. We want to try to limit some of the transports that public safety has been doing, especially during the fall when you return. It's beautiful. Let's enjoy the outdoors. One of the things that we can all do, again, we've talked about this, wearing face covering, masks, social distancing or personal distancing, and hand washing. You know, when everybody's been on a lot of Zoom meetings lately, and we all see, I see it myself. I'm touching my nose, my mouth. We have to consciously think about not touching our eyes, our nose, and our mouth to help safeguard ourselves. We've had a lot of move-in plans, meeting for move-in plans, and we are waiting your arrival. We think we have a very organized plan for your return. One of the things I really want to mention, and I'm sorry you can't see the screen, is our Live Safe app. We are incorporating, and one of the mandates for a return is that our community members have to daily submit to themselves a health verification survey. So if you go to the emails that have come out to you, it's very specific instructions on how to utilize that. And if somebody is bringing it up, so I'm glad you could hear me. That's what the new look of Live Safe looks like right now. When you fill out that purple box, it's going to, on this left screen, ask you a series of questions. Unfortunately, it doesn't have autofill, and we're trying to get that introduced into the system. But you have to do that every day. We're not going to be the phone checker police. We're not going to be pounding on your head saying, let me see your IDs, you know, and let me see your daily health verification. But we are going to be doing random testing. And why are we doing this? But we're doing this for a variety of reasons. This is an aid in keeping our community safe. If for some reason you do answer some of the questions that may cause some concerns, it's channeled in a lot of different ways, and someone will contact you on what you're supposed to do. That's one of the big features on how we could help safeguard ourselves. I know one of the other questions was, how is access going to be gained onto campus? Currently, we're going to utilize 2 entrance points to the campus. The main entrance on North Benson Road will be staffed by officers and our ambassadors 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The other entrance point to campus is going to be the Barlow Road entrance on the southern end of campus, and that'll be open daily from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. There's been also a lot of questions about cars on campus. We are not going to make very many exceptions. It has to be an extreme circumstance that we would allow cars on campus for first-year students and sophomores. So please take that in consideration when you want to bring a car on campus. Okay, most likely you're not going to be able to do that. So our goal this year is to keep you safe. We're going to continue to provide a highest level of service that we possibly can to you, but we're going to be doing that in new ways, in new creative ways, and hopefully we'll all be safe in the coming semester. Thank you, Toby.
Thank you, Director Pelazza, for your wonderful answer, and thank you everyone for answering. One question we want to touch on based on the questions we've received in the past week is regarding the hotspots states and their travel. Slide by chance. Touching on hotspot travel, I'd like to invite Vice President Donoghue to answer and give an overview of what steps the university is taking for those students coming from these areas.
Great, thank you, Vinny. And I've been reading some of the questions, so I'm going to try to hit upon all of the hotspot information that's going on. The first thing I want to acknowledge is this is really, frustrating. I want to be honest with all of you, especially those that are coming from hotspot states. And I want to acknowledge that. And as recently as today, we've been receiving different guidance from the state of Connecticut. And with that, I want to just acknowledge that, and I appreciate your nimbleness as we move forward, as we've tried to create the safest plan for our students that are coming from hotspot states, as well as for the entire campus community once they arrive. So on Tuesday, you received an email from myself that also included a link to a survey. Within this email, it specified several things that has to go into if you are coming from a hotspot state. So the first thing that you need to decide if you're coming from a hotspot state is where you would like to quarantine, because you have to quarantine if you would like to come to classes on our campus. There are several options when it comes to quarantining. If you would like to quarantine on our campus, that is fine. You need to indicate that on that survey, and you need to arrive on August 16th. If you would like to quarantine somewhere else in Connecticut or in another state that is not a hotspot state, that is also fine. Quarantining means that you need to be in isolation, not in a hotspot state, for 14 days. Not necessarily in isolation, but you cannot be in a hotspot state for 14 days. That is also fine, and you just need to indicate that on the survey. So let me explain a little bit of what quarantine would look like on our campus. So if you elect to quarantine on our campus, you're going to arrive on August 16th. Prior to that, you would have already received your institutional test that we've been referring to on this call, and you would have already taken it and sent it back in. The majority of these tests we will have the results for. We are recognizing that there is some people that are coming from across the country. In those cases, we acknowledge that. Those are going to be handled on a case-by-case basis. When you arrive, you're going to be assigned a move-in time. You'll come onto campus. You'll move all of your belongings into your room. This is one large change that I want to specify right now, and I'm sending out another communication to students and parents tomorrow. Previously, it was told that parents and guests accompanying that student moving into quarantine would also need to take a test. If that parent or guest is only staying 24 hours or less in the state of Connecticut, they no longer need to take a test. Therefore, a parent or guest can accompany that student onto campus to help them move in without a proof of a negative COVID-19 test. Those students, again, so they will come, they will move their belongings in, and they will be in quarantine for 3 days before they are issued another test. After that initial test and the results are received, they're going to go into moderate quarantine. So let me explain the 5 days that students will be in quarantine. When students are in quarantine for those first 5 initial days, they must remain in their room unless they are going to the bathroom or they are going to pick up their meals. There will be a separate location on campus for students in quarantine to pick up their meals. Those are the only 2 reasons that students can leave those rooms in those 5 days. We are calling that strict quarantine. After those students receive 2 negative COVID-19 tests, one that was mailed to them at the beginning, as well as the one we're providing on campus, they're able to go into moderate quarantine, in which they will be able to walk around freely on campus. They'll still be able to leave for their meals, and they can practice social distancing outside wearing a mask. They will also receive another test 7 days later, and then they will be outside of quarantine. If at any point these students do receive a positive test, they will be moved into isolation. All students from hotspot states will be quarantining in their room. They will be moving into their room. In most cases, they will be living by themselves, but in some cases, they might also have a roommate from a hotspot state or a suite mate or an apartment mate. In those cases, they will be quarantining with them together. By the end of these quarantine days for the students living on campus, so those of you who might be living with someone who's in quarantine, but you yourself are not from a hotspot state, by the time you are moving into campus, these students would have had 3 negative tests, and they will be finishing up their quarantine in a safe environment in which you would be able to move into. To repeat myself one more time, you do not have to quarantine on campus. If you're quarantining either in another location in the state of Connecticut or in a non-hotspot state, the only test that you need to take is the one that we are mailing to you, and you just have to let us know what your quarantine plan is. All students need to quarantine from hotspot states 14 days prior to being able to go to campus and resume classes. I'm going to pause to Will. Did I miss out anything? This is really challenging and it keeps changing. And I'm going to send out another communication to the community tomorrow because of that most recent change regarding parents and guardians not having to take a 72-hour test prior. Great.
Perfect. Thank you, Vice President Donoghue, for that answer regarding testing. And I'd like to remind everyone that if you have any questions, you can use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. And now we just like to take the remainder of the time to answer a few of the questions, getting in on our side. So the first question I have here, how will the 10% of the students be randomly selected for testing each week? And can a student opt out of that?
Penny, I'm happy to answer that. We're going to use our Office of Institutional Research to create a random list of about 8 to 10% of our campus community. That involves the students and the employees. And then when we notify the 8 to 10% on Thursday via email, we will ask them to go into a link and pick an appointment time, a reservation. We're going to be testing about 15 individuals for every 15 minutes over in the Quick Center. This is required by the state of Connecticut, and so no individual is able to opt out of this. However, remember, it's a random sample. Some people might be selected 2 or 3 times during the semester, and some may not be selected at all. That's the idea of randomized. But again, Thursday, individuals will be emailed. They will schedule a reservation to be tested. It'll only take a couple of minutes. It will be very well orchestrated, so it shouldn't be burdensome at all.
Thank you, Vice President Birge. Mr. Fitz, I would like to ask the next question. Could you speak more to the micro markets on campus, and also would the dinings be serving hot food?
Absolutely. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me here, Oksana?
Yes.
Okay. The micro markets really were a great suggestion from our food service to open up other locations on campus to make it easier if students were coming from class or the schedule was just very, very tight and they needed another location to go to. So there'll be micro market locations open on the first floor of Barone Campus Center. If people remember where the old pool tables used to be, the regular micro market, which has always been located outside the Stag Snack Bar back door, will be in operation. And the final new one will be in the Dolan School of Business Dunkin' Donuts area. So we have 3 micro markets that will be open. Students can use a swipe there anytime, just as if they were taking a swipe in one of the residence halls they have been assigned. And we hope that will make it easier for them, especially class days, to pick up meals.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Fitzpatrick. Next question we have is how has the Recplex been altered to accommodate social distancing? Will masks be required to be worn when working out? And I guess in general, running sessions?
Yes, happy to answer that, Vinny. So I was over in the Recplex on Monday, and it's really, they've done an extraordinary job of outlining how they can create social distancing, 6 feet, in terms of maybe every other treadmill or elliptical. The e-gaming, there was plenty of students over there using e-gaming. And so what they're doing is they're going to reduce the density. They're actually getting some software. It's very, very cool, and it's going to enable students to see how busy it is over there, whether or not there's capacity to go in, so you don't have to go over there and then wait. So when students come back to campus, that feature will be available. There will be reservations for a lot of the classes that are run there. It's all marked off on the floor. People will be able to stay 6 feet apart. And yes, masks will be required in the Recplex with the exception of swimming. And right now the swimming pool is not open. But for all other usages, masks will be required.
Thank you, Sue. The next question, Dean Johnson, please could you speak more to the policy on parents visiting and how long they can visit and the procedure they need to go through?
Thanks for that question, Toby. So yes, one of the provisions that we have placed in our visitor policy is that we will allow the immediate family members of students to visit them on campus. The caveat in that, which I believe I may have mentioned or one of my colleagues mentioned, is that those individuals cannot enter our university housing. So they can certainly come to campus and pick a student up if you want to go to lunch in town or just to say a quick hello. But that is the limitations of which we're going in terms of allowing visitors on campus. Our main goal in this whole endeavor, as I've heard my colleague, Dr. Susan Birge, say over and over again, is to insulate the Fairfield University community. You know, we understand that particularly for first-year students and even for sophomores, juniors, and seniors, that there are strong connections to family members for which they want to maintain while they are enrolled at the university. But we need to do all that we can to make sure that whatever individuals may be bringing with them, not to say that anybody necessarily will, but the off chance, right, that someone comes onto our campus who's not someone who needs to be on our campus or is a day-to-day member of our community, we want to limit those interactions as much as we possibly can. And this is not just happening for our students. These same rules apply to our faculty and staff at the university as well, too. So we at the same time are not allowed to have visitors as we normally would come to our campus. So not for students alone, really everyone. Just we need to keep the people who need to be here on campus, and for everyone else to remain off.
Perfect, thank you. Maybe one follow-up to that would be, how have the university masses, I know also Director Pelazza could answer this, how have the university masses been changed, and will they be allowing outdoor visitors, given that we are a Jesuit university?
He's been called lovely, and now Dr. Pelazza, I'm gonna let him answer this question.
Did I say doctor? Director, but he can get a PhD.
That's okay. Boy, I'm really
Handing
moving
it
up during
out,
this
handing
meeting,
it
I
out.
have to tell you. But to
He
answer your question,
he
Vinny,
called them doctor, not saint.
that is a very good question. And to let you know, no, the outside public is not going to be allowed to attend any of our masses in our chapel. As far as outside guests, as Dr. Johnson was saying, we're now allowing outside guests. It's going to be on a very, very limited basis. For example, if your parents want to come and visit, or your guardian, they can come outside, spend some time, but as Dr. Johnson said, they're not going to be allowed in our housing facility.
Thank you, Director Pelazza. So I think we'll take one or two more questions before we will have to end. But for the next question, it's about testing. If a student cannot come in on the 16th of August, would they still be eligible for the university quarantine?
Unfortunately, because a move-in for the hotspot state students has to be very well organized, orchestrated, and has to be done very, very safely, that's the only day that we are going to permit our students from hotspot states to move in to quarantine, self-quarantine on campus. As Karen has mentioned, there's other options. You can stay in Connecticut, or you can stay in a non-hotspot state with family or friends. I've had a number of calls today, and parents are going to stay at an Airbnb with their son or daughter, or they're going to use some time to visit relatives. So there's options. We're just saying the option to quarantine on campus will require a move-in on August 16th.
Perfect, thank you, Vice President Birge. One question I have here is about the availability of spaces for very small students to gather. Will residence hall lounges and or study rooms in academic buildings be available for use?
So I can comment on the residence hall. So residence hall lounges can be reserved to be used for small gatherings that can be done through the area coordinator or the resident assistants within the community. Todd, do you want to comment on the academic buildings and the classrooms?
Yeah, quite honestly, I don't know if it's been decided yet if they can use any of the academic buildings for social gatherings. I think we should talk to Christine on that. We'll get back, Vinny, we'll get back to you about that, okay?
Perfect. We'll have that answer for everyone on the Tuesday night webinar at 6 p.m.
Okay.
Toby, I'll let you take the last question then.
Yeah, thank you, Vinny. So for the last question, Vice President Donoghue, please could you speak to the university's shutdown policy? What will warrant the university to go into a shutdown?
Great, that's a wonderful question. And Dr. Birge and I had the privilege of working with the state on our reopening plan that also included a shutdown plan. We've adopted a Johns Hopkins University model if we ever, God forbid, had to shut down because the operations of the institution can no longer function. We would be able to do so and transition fully to remote learning. That is exactly what we did in March. So for our sophomores, juniors, and seniors, that is exactly what you would witness if we had to pivot immediately to a shutdown experience in virtual learning. But before we get there, we have a lot of mechanisms put in place to try to prevent that from occurring. And with this Johns Hopkins University model, it is a color coding phase kind of approach. So if we're noticing a certain area on a campus or a certain population of campus might be testing positive at a higher rate than what we are expecting within our community. Because I also want to note we are expecting cases within our community. Nationally, right, I think the statistic in this, let me talk about Connecticut specifically, it's about 1% of the population is coming forward with being positive. If you look at our own microcosm of an institution, you need to anticipate of a student body of 4,000, 40 students alone, right? If we're just looking at a statistic basis, would be positive with COVID-19. So with that, we know that we'll have cases. And again, the goal is to control those cases, to ensure the minute that someone tests positive, that we work with our contact tracers. We know who their direct contacts would be, who they've had intimate relationships with, who they've been in touch with for more than 15 minutes in a small space, right? And those people would also go into quarantine. So we have these mechanisms in place to, again, to contain, to control. If we're noticing potentially it's one specific residence hall, maybe we're looking at that residence hall and we're putting in different techniques in that community, again, to minimize, to bring our cases down and for us to be able to control it. If at any point we feel as an institution that the operations cannot function, I can just give an easy example. Let's say, X percentage of our faculty members have come down with COVID-19 and they are unable to teach classes. That might, again, come to a moment that we as an institution need to make that decision. But for us to get to that point, we have so many factors that would be put in place before we get there. This document that we submitted to the state that goes over this plan will be live on our website for students and families to be able to review as well. Very confident plan. Sue, do you want to comment at all? I know you were part of this writing of the plan as well.
Yeah, just that we're going to do everything to not only maintain the health and safety of the students, and again, what we don't want to have is people becoming ill. We don't want them certainly to become seriously ill. This is a tough virus, certainly to deal with and to beat, but we may be able to mitigate. So again, as Karen pointed out, if we have a cluster, we may actually reduce class sizes a little bit more. We may actually reduce some activities. We're prepared. We've been studying this all summer, and we feel pretty confident. We've developed metrics. We've developed a dashboard. We have a senior public health advisory group of experts who will look at the data every single day in order to make informed decisions about this public health issue. Again, safety of students, safety of the entire community.
And the other thing too, any decision that we would make that is that large would be in consultation with the state of Connecticut as well as the local health department.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Vice President Donoghue and Dr. Birge, doctor there. But I'd like to thank again all the panelists for their amazing participation tonight and for taking the time to attend tonight's webinar. And I invite all the attendees to come to the next FUSA webinar on academic and career readiness, which will cover everything regarding classrooms, delivery of instruction, jobs and internships in the age of COVID. That'll be next Tuesday at 6 p.m., forgive me. But as mentioned, tonight's webinar has been recorded and available for future viewing on our new FUSA YouTube channel shortly. And if you have any other further questions, you can check out the Stags Come Home webpage on the university website. But thank you all for making it tonight, and we wish you all the best. So take care and good night.
Great job, Mr. President. Good night.